It's Tuesday, July 8th, 2008, and it's 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Hey, Stashers, welcome back from the holiday weekend, and a day later than I expected, but I got to apologize for that. Yesterday, Monday, was the press conference for the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, which, of course, as a member of Oregon NORML, I was part of, and had to spend a lot of my time down there getting the press conference ready to go, videotaping and editing that. And on top of that, in my other job as a political talk radio host, I got the chance to interview the actor Harry Shearer. You may know him from The Simpsons. He does lots of voices on The Simpsons, and got to interview him for my show that'll be coming up on this Saturday. So if you have XM satellite radio, check out channel 167 between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and you'll get to hear my show and my interview with Harry Shearer. So that's what kind of kept me out of the loop for yesterday, and I apologize for not getting a Stash podcast up there, but we got plenty of stuff for today's podcast. We're going to take a look at our hemp headlines, plus we'll have two songs for our musical break. I'll get you the one from yesterday and the one from today, as well as a couple of interviews. We're going to speak with NORML Deputy Director Paul Armentano, who's going to comment on the theory that Big Pharma is somehow keeping pot illegal because they don't want the competition. It's something a lot of us anti-prohibition people have said over the years, and Paul's here to tell us that it just may not be true. Also, we're going to speak with Whitney Taylor, who's the campaign chairwoman for the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy out in Massachusetts. They've turned in their signatures for their decriminalization measure that'll go on the ballot, we hope, in Massachusetts in this November's election. The measure would decriminalize and make it a fine-only offense, $100 fine offense, for people caught with 1 ounce or less of marijuana in the state of Massachusetts. So it's good to be back. Sit back and relax, grab your favorite pipe, and enjoy your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Oregon Cannabis Tax Act for 2010 kicks off signature drive. A press conference introducing an initiative petition, the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act 2010, and its signature gathering campaign was held yesterday at the campaign office in Portland, Oregon. Media representatives from all of the major news stations, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, attended the press conference, as well as a top news radio station and classic rock station, and the city's weekly alternative newspaper. Speakers at the press conference included Madeline Martinez, the executive director of Oregon NORML, and Paul Stanford, the head of the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp and the THC Foundation, advertisers here on the Daily Audio Stash. OCTA proposes to redirect millions of dollars annually into Oregon's general fund by permitting cannabis to be sold in retail stores to adults over 21 years of age. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission would be tasked with managing the program, which would license approved individuals to cultivate the product for sale. A portion of the cannabis grown would also be directed to registered cardholders in the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. A portion of the taxes collected would go to drug treatment. In addition, the initiative would permit cultivation of industrial hemp, which could quickly become Oregon's largest cash crop. Used for clothing, food, building materials, fuel, and even plastics, hemp is in great demand but cannot be grown under current law. Supporters estimate that revenue generated by state-controlled cannabis sales could easily reach $300 million annually. In addition, tourism and related activities would generate at least $50 million annually. The campaign plans to gather a minimum of 82,769 valid signatures by the deadline of 5 p.m. on July 2, 2010. After the measure has been certified by the Secretary of State, it will be presented to Oregonians for a vote in November of 2010. For more information about the press conference or the campaign, please contact Madeline Martinez at 503-313-9929. The full text of the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act and explanations can be found at the website cannabistaxact.org. Of course, I'm really excited about this, and every day after the podcast, I'll be heading out to the streets to be gathering signatures for this petition drive. Check out the website at cannabistaxact.org to learn more about it. This is a revolutionary campaign in that the Cannabis Tax Act has been specifically drafted to conform to the United States Constitution and U.S. treaties. It's been specifically designed to stand up to the inevitable court challenges that it's going to face at the federal level. And if this is successful, it'll become the blueprint for all of the states in the United States that choose to be able to regulate marijuana for use by responsible adults. Cop chokes marijuana suspect, from WKRN News. WKRN News reports that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is investigating after video shot from inside a Mount Joliet, Tennessee patrol car shows an officer choking a suspect. In the video, the officer has both hands around the neck of the suspect and is telling him to, quote, stick your tongue out, end quote. The suspect, James Anders, then passes out. According to WKRN, quote, the incident began with a traffic stop. Officer Cosby said he smelled burning marijuana and ordered Anders out of the car and told him to spit out something he had in his mouth. Cosby didn't find any marijuana in Anders' mouth, but did find a small bag of the drug inside his car, end quote. Anders was arrested on charges of possessing marijuana, resisting arrest, and tampering with evidence. The charges were later dismissed because of the police officer's behavior. Cosby was reprimanded, and the tape was handed over to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Now, you really got to go out to the Stash blog at stash.normal.org to see this video and how this cop is choking this man. And in the video, you can hear the officer say, it's for your own good to prevent you from having an overdose. Well, thank goodness we have cops choking people to the point of unconsciousness to protect them from the non-existent danger of overdosing on a mouthful of marijuana. The cop knew that the man had weed on him from the smell of marijuana, and he had no other reason to suspect the man was trying to swallow any other drugs. The cop just wanted an easier arrest and more charges, but ended up finding nothing in his mouth and then loses the whole case for misconduct. Your tax dollars hard at work. World Health Organization study shows U.S. is top drug user. A World Health Organization survey of 17 countries, conducted by some of the world's leading substance abuse researchers, found that the United States has the highest rate of marijuana and cocaine use. The numbers are startling. In the United States, 42.4% admitted having used marijuana. The only other nation that came close was New Zealand, another bastion of get-tough policies, at 41.9%. Some of the most striking numbers are from the Netherlands, where adults are permitted to possess a small amount of marijuana and purchase it from regulated businesses. Some U.S. officials have claimed that these Dutch policies have created some sort of decadent cesspool of drug abuse, but the new study demolishes such assertions. In the Netherlands, only 19.8% have used marijuana, less than half the U.S. figure. Even more striking is what the researchers found when they asked young adults when they had started using marijuana. Again, the United States led the world, with 20.2% trying marijuana by age 15. No other country was even close, and in the Netherlands, just 7% had used marijuana by age 15, roughly one-third of the U.S. figure. It seems so counterintuitive to the drug warriors, but the more you try to stamp out drug use through arrests and incarceration, the more drug use you get. And speaking of prison, drugs are quite easy to get there, too. So, if we can't even keep drugs out of the hands of people who are locked up behind prison walls, guarded 24 hours a day by men with guns, and searched and surveilled every day, how do we really expect to keep drugs out of the hands of free adults?
Marijuana is an addictive drug, which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death.
Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
Sensible Pot, a Half-Baked Policy, Dude, from the Boston Herald, by Howie Carr.
Marijuana makes you stupid. It's as simple as that. And now in Massachusetts, we are going to have a ballot question that asks the following. Do you really want to make it even easier than it already is to get stupid and stay stupid? Yes, the Bong Brigade is on the march again. They want to put the high back in high school, the truckin' back in truck stops, the joint back in all those joint legislative committees. Stand by to see stoners at the Stone Zoo, potheads in Marblehead. The grass is always greener in Greenfield, dude. If you liked Hempfest on the Boston Common every September, you're going to love legalized marijuana. This one's like totally for Jerry Garcia.
Wow. 5 paragraphs of ad hominem attacks before even a description of what the ballot proposal actually is. I really wish Carl Sagan were still alive to respond to how marijuana makes you stupid. Or maybe I should just go through my Rolodex of all the attorneys and physicians who are all very intelligent people who managed to get through law or med school even while a part of the so-called Bong Brigade.
This year, the front group is something called the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy, and it's pushing a sensible state marijuana policy. Its flaques are available for media interviews to discuss their sensible policy. Pot charges are usually meaningless add-ons, like piling a driving to endanger on top of an OUI. The potheads say 7,500 marijuana citations make it onto the Corey system every year. But how many of those Class B controlled substance convictions are added to someone's Corey record along with more serious raps, like, say, possession of a Class D controlled substance, cocaine, with intent to distribute?
Well, if the charges are so meaningless, then why add them on? And you admit by implication that not 100% of the 7,500 marijuana citations are add-ons, so how do you defend a Corey entry for the less than 7,500 citizens for nothing more than just smoking pot? Oh, right. Because it makes you stupid. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is now in the business of policing stupidity.
The ganja guys then cite the alleged collateral damage of this Corey indignity, inability to find employment, obtain housing, and receive a college loan. Please. The reason stoners can't find employment is because they're too wasted. They forgot to turn on the alarm clock. They went out for a smoke break and never returned. They missed the bus, man. They can't obtain housing because they can't get it together to ever leave mom's rent-free basement.
And, what about the college loan? Oh, wait, let me guess.
Too blazed to fill out the paperwork.
Right? Somebody has been watching too much Stoners in the Mist. Most marijuana users are just like most beer drinkers, productive, law-abiding citizens who responsibly use a recreational intoxicant.
Decriminalizing pot doesn't seem like a big deal, I'll grant you. After the courts decreed Adam and Eve are going to be Adam and Steve, bringing Cheech and Chong along for the ride amounts to little more than a footnote.
Yeah, nice of Howie to take a little detour from maligning marijuana users by dragging out a little bigoted homophobia.
The fact is, once you make something legal, even if it's just de facto, it's easier to get.
I've got some news for you, Howie. Everyone who wants to smoke pot already is. And nobody who doesn't smoke pot is suddenly now going to want to, even though it'll give them a fine rather than an arrest. Is that all that's stopping you from toking up, Howie? The fact that it's illegal? And the statement is demonstrably false. The United States has some of the most punitive laws regarding marijuana, yet we lead the world in marijuana use. 83.9% of 12th graders say marijuana is fairly easy or very easy to get, and about 42% of them have tried it. So you think turning marijuana from an arrest to a fine is going to make things worse than that? Well, according to that recent World Health Organization survey, in countries where marijuana use is more tolerated, they have lower rates of use and teen availability. In the Netherlands, where any adult can walk into a coffee shop and buy and smoke up to 5 grams of some of the most potent pot on the planet, teen and adult use is half that of America, and teens find it much harder to get. Marijuana does not make you stupid, Howie, but writing hysterical attacks against it can make you appear stupid.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 12 states today, and THCF has medical clinics in 6 of those states. Our physicians help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help them obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at www.hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
There's efforts going on all around the United States to help end adult marijuana prohibition, and this time we're going to take a look out to the East Coast and Massachusetts. We're joined by telephone now on the road with Whitney Taylor, who's with the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy in Boston, Massachusetts. And Whitney, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Oh, thank you so much. Great being here.
Let's set up for our listeners what the situation is in Massachusetts. You guys, with the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy, are beginning a marijuana decriminalization measure. Let's just tell them what the basic details of that are before we get to the real story.
Sure. Well, the basic details, Russ, are this. We actually just last week, the initiative process in Massachusetts is a 2-stage signature gathering with going in front of the legislature. We actually just last week turned in all of our signatures for our final signature drive, and we have been notified that we actually have been certified for the ballot. We're waiting right now for our ballot question. But what our initiative is going to do is basically make personal possession of an ounce or less of marijuana a civil penalty rather than a criminal penalty with a $100 fine. One of the unique things about our initiative that I'm very proud of is the fact that we also, with this initiative, deal with juveniles, with folks under the age of 18. Right now, when somebody is arrested and booked for possessing an ounce or less of marijuana, we're not saying that they're going to jail, although never say never here in Massachusetts. But what does happen is there is a CORI, what we call here, or a criminal offender record information report that is created for every single person that is arrested. And what that CORI does is basically creates barriers, lifelong barriers, often in the case, to school loans, housing, jobs, licensure of many kinds. And what we were looking at is, an individual under the age of 18 who would need the first job, the first apartment, the school loan. Why should they continue to get the criminal record? So we actually wrote into this initiative that for individuals under the age of 18, it's a citation with a $100 fine that is delivered to a parent or guardian. So we involve the family. And then in addition to the citation, there is a drug awareness course and a little bit of community service. But then at the end of the day, there's no criminal record. There's no query for any of those individuals.
Well, that sounds like a really a good change for the law. Now, what brought this to my attention, other than you guys just turning in the signatures, was quite a scathing editorial here by someone in the Boston Herald, one of your major newspapers here, and I didn't catch the fella's name, but it just...
Howie Carr.
Howie Carr, that's right, that's it. And I just love the opening sentence: marijuana makes you stupid. It's as simple as that. And boy, you know you're going to get some good journalism with a lead like that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I mean, Howie Carr is one of those individuals. He does write for the Boston Herald, and just so your listeners know, in Boston, there are about 6 major papers in Massachusetts, 2 in Boston, the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald, and kind of a comparison that people might know a little bit better. It's kind of like the New York Times and the New York Post. The Herald being the Post.
I was going to say.
It's the more conservative. They kind of go out there and they want the exaggerated splash versus fact. And if anybody else has read Howie's article, you can tell that he certainly is not worried about fact.
Yeah, and let's just address some of his points. I mean, if I can weed through all the ad hominem attacks in here, but one of his points here seems to be that if you decriminalize the use of cannabis, then many more people are going to be using it. What would you have to say to something like that?
And actually, just so everybody knows, I did write a letter to the editor immediately and turned it in. But we have 11 states here in the U.S. that have similar laws to what we're proposing here in Massachusetts, and not one of them has shown an increase in marijuana use. As a matter of fact, the White House sponsored a study that came out in 2001 that was done by the National Research Council, showing that criminalization and harsher penalties do not affect use one way or another. And I'm sure many of your listeners are aware that just last week, an international study came out from the World Health Organization looking at countries that have kind of draconian approaches to illicit drug policy, like here in the U.S., and other countries that have a more enlightened or harm reduction approach. And what it shows is, we here in the U.S. actually won every single, you name the drug, we're winning in the world as far as the amount of people that are using or abusing it.
Yeah, and another thing that Howie points out here, he says that he seems to think we're exaggerating the threat of the arrest and the harms of the criminal offender record information system, saying that it's just a add-on type of thing to usually more serious charges. How did your group respond to that?
Well, basically, what we do know is there are approximately 7,500 people a year arrested for simple marijuana possession, and that is, if you look at the charges, that was listed as the first charge. So, logically, that wouldn't be an add-on. But the point is, if an individual is breaking other laws, our initiative isn't going to change how those laws are enforced or how what individuals will face as far as a punishment goes. But what we're saying is for simple marijuana possession, let's make this a civil penalty. We are not legalizing marijuana. We're just creating a different type of penalty system that does not end up with the quarry. And obviously, Howie does not understand what quarries can actually do. Before I went on to this campaign, I actually for 3 years worked with the quarry reform movement here in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Alliance for Reform Quarry, and the Union of Minority Neighborhoods. And, there's a whole bunch of people out there that do just get arrested for marijuana possession, especially if you think about poor urban areas where they love doing sweeps and just bringing people in for whatever's out there.
Yeah, and one of his last points here, he tries to put down the idea that these quarry problems are going to cause problems in finding employment or housing or college loans. And his point, how he likes to say, that's not the problem. It's the problem that you stoners are just lazy and can't get a job or something like that.
That's so ridiculous. I mean, and the whole article is just such a Cheech and Chong stereotype that was just, I mean, enraging as far as I was concerned. But at the end of the day, having worked in the quarry reform movement here in Massachusetts, I met every day people who were trying to get jobs, and we're not talking about, you know, people that are wanting to be airline pilots. We're talking about people who wanted to work at Blockbuster, and they would have a quarry report, and a report would be generated, and they would not get the job.
Yeah, this happens.
And that's the fact of it. You know, it's not people that are well connected and well off. It's the people that really need, you know, jobs. It's disenfranchised populations. It's poorer people, people of color, that, you know, these records, you know, when you're sitting there trying to get your leg in and a leg up, are being smacked down for the fact that a piece of paper, this quarry, exists.
Yeah, and so you just turned in your signatures. How many signatures were required, and how many did you turn in?
This go round, 11,099 certified and then validated signatures were required, because first you turn in the town and city halls where they certify that people are actually a registered voter at the address that matches their voter registration card. So we turned over 20,000 raw signatures in. We got back from the town and city halls over 15,000 signatures. You know, and that just means, you know, if you move here in Massachusetts, say I moved down the street, if I didn't change my address on my voter registration form, I technically would not have been a registered voter. So, you know, over 20,000 people this go around who thought they were registered voters signed. And then we turned in 15 to the state, and then they wiped out a couple it's a law here, stray mark law, where, you know, somebody, you know, tries ink going on a pen on the corner of a petition, they can actually knock out that whole petition because that's a stray mark outside of the signature boxes.
Wow. So
we ended up having 13,581, I believe. I hope your listeners excuse me since I am on the road. I don't have my exact number in front of me, but it was you know, 13,000 and change that made it through both stages of the process in the second stage of the signature drive. You know, the first stage of the signature drive, we turned in over 106,000 signatures.
Okay, so if all the signatures are validated, you guys will be on the ballot this November?
Yes, and it's looking good. So far, we believe that they have been certified by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. So what we're just waiting for now is to be assigned our ballot question number.
Excellent.
And then we get to move forward with our yes on question, whatever we're going to be, campaign.
Excellent. So how, if we got listeners out there that are in the Massachusetts area and they want to get involved, what websites or phone numbers can they use to get in touch with you guys?
Well, our website is sensiblemarijuanapolicy.org, and the phone number is 617-901-7765.
All right, and we'll have links to that up at our blog at stash.normal.org. We've been speaking with Whitney Taylor, who's the campaign manager for the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy in Massachusetts. Whitney, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Will. I don't work at a used record store. I don't own an iguana, although I'm sure they make great pets. I don't have dreadlocks or play the acoustic guitar. I can remember quite well, thank you, and no, I don't constantly have the munchies. When 420 comes around, I've still got 40 minutes of work left. I've never hit a girl on a bike with my car or shot my friend with a shotgun. I've never had to apologize for letting a girl I was watching drown in a pool while I was getting high because, duh, I wouldn't be getting high if I was around children. I'm a regular guy who works regular jobs just like the majority of all Americans who use marijuana occasionally and responsibly. My name is Will, and I'm normal.
Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. Hey Stasher, since I missed the podcast yesterday, I've got a backlog of songs to play for our musical break, so you get to have a twofer today. We'll play our Blues Monday song that I was supposed to come up with yesterday. This is a song by Marcia Ball called Down in the Neighborhood. Marcia's from Austin, and she reigns supreme as the queen of the honky-tonk and blues piano. And then for our second tune, we got a little country folk alternative. That's the name of the group. And a song called Getting High, which is a sweet acoustic love ballad with nice, easy lyrics and a beautiful guitar. This song comes to you from British Columbia. So enjoy these two songs from the country folk alternative, Getting High, and first, Marcia Ball with Down in the Neighborhood. Check out our blog at stash.normal.org, where you can get MP3 downloads of both of these songs. Enjoy!
Just the other day, you've been cheating while I look the other way. I've been trusting, you've been up to no good. You can't have any secrets down in the neighborhood. Told me she saw something that she wasn't supposed to see. You and another woman making love, I thought you understood. You can't do any sneaking down in the neighborhood. Well, it's a small town and people talk, step out of line, and you're gonna get caught down in the neighborhood. Cheat on you, tear down your playhouse and cut you loose. Everybody, they're gonna know what you're doing. They all went to peeping down in the neighborhood. Well, you don't have kiss and tell. I'm gonna hear from someone else down in the neighborhood. Down in the neighborhood.
Leaning over this old guitar, my back is feeling sore, wondering what's in store for me. never ever meant to make you cry. Never got a chance to wipe a tear from your eye. I never got the chance, I was getting high. Feeding loose in these old blue jeans. Forgot my number, what does it mean? I woke up from a bad, bad dream, I cried. I never got a chance to say goodbye. Never got a chance to wipe a tear from your eye. I never got the chance, I was getting high. Made mistakes like I knew I would. Got into trouble just like I should. I never made it to Hollywood with you. I was your first, you were my last. It's hard to let go of the past. It all happened way too fast for me. I never ever meant to make you cry. Never got a chance to wipe a tear from your eye. I never got the chance, I was getting high. Living life in a dark balloon. The party ended way too soon. You were the sun, the moon to me. I never got a chance to say goodbye. Never got a chance to wipe a tear from your eye. I never got the chance, I was getting high. I never got the chance, I was getting high.
Almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we were just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
Part of what we like to do here at the Daily Audio Stash is to take a look at the lies and prevarications that are propagated by the drug warriors, the prohibitionists, and there's plenty of those. But we also need to be intellectually honest and take a look at some of our own mythology here in the cannabis community. And there's no better person to discuss that than our own Deputy Director of NORML, Paul Armentano, who's joining us by telephone from California. And Paul, welcome back to the Stash.
Good to be here, Russ.
I saw a post that you had put up, and we talked a couple emails on this about this myth that goes around in the cannabis community. Maybe it's not a myth, but it's a theory, I suppose, that part of the reason why marijuana is illegal is because big pharma, the pharmaceutical companies, wouldn't want to compete with a natural herb, that it would be a big business loss for them. And I thought you had some really good opinions on this. And let's just talk about this a little bit with our listeners. Why do you not think that big pharma is behind pot's prohibition?
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm castigating anybody in the marijuana community. I mean, I understand, probably better than most, why individuals have been searching for what they think would be a logical explanation to explain our current prohibition. And the reason individuals come up with various theories, like the idea that perhaps it's the big pharma that is actually behind the curtain controlling and maintaining prohibition, is because our current laws and the government's position on this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And when a position doesn't make any sense, people then struggle to try and come up with some sort of inventive way to explain or make the irrational rational. So I think it's very logical that some people may assume that one of the reasons marijuana, medical marijuana in particular, remains prohibited in this country is because, in fact, the pharmaceutical industry is lobbying to keep it prohibited.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've even been guilty of saying from time to time is that pot's illegal because they can't put a barcode on it or patent it, and, well, that's just not true.
Yeah, it actually is not true. If anybody wants to really dig in and do some research on this subject, they will discover that, in fact, the pharmaceutical industry has applied for and received patents on essentially every therapeutic compound that this plant has to offer. They've taken out patents on synthesized versions of the plant's actual cannabinoids. They have taken out compounds on what are known as agonists, synthetic molecules that also bind with the endocannabinoid receptors in the brain. They've even taken out patents on antagonists, agents that could block the endocannabinoid receptors from working. And in fact, there are pharmaceutical companies that have actually taken out patents on the natural occurring cannabinoids themselves. And, your listeners might be surprised to know that, in fact, there are patents that are held on the actual cannabinoids, and they're held, in fact, by the United States government, of all people.
Yeah, and of course there's all the preparations and such that they'll make. I know GW Pharmaceuticals is working on Sativex and some others that, they would actually be benefited by the end of Prohibition because it would be easier for them to get these drugs to market.
Well, certainly that's been my impression for some time. For Big Pharma is not taking out these patents. They're not researching these different properties of marijuana because they're benevolent. They're doing it because they want to someday bring these drugs to market and make a profit on the sale and use of these cannabis-based pharmaceuticals. Now, how is the pharmaceutical industry going to be able to do that? Well, the first thing they're going to need to do is get their cannabis-based medicines approved by a nationally recognized regulatory body. In this country, it would be the FDA. In Canada, it would be Health Canada. In other nations, they have their own regulatory bodies. And in my opinion, it is much more likely that a regulatory body like the FDA or like Health Canada is going to approve cannabis-based medications if we're living in a political and a cultural climate that is accepting of the use of marijuana as a medicine. I think a good example of this, we just have to look toward England, where just recently Sativex, the oral cannabis spray that you mentioned, made by GW Pharmaceuticals, was rejected by the Drug Regulatory Agency in Great Britain. Now, that same drug has been accepted and approved and is now legally available by prescription in Canada. So you have one government body accepting that the drug is safe and effective. You have another government body rejecting that that same drug is safe and effective. And frankly, the only difference I see between the UK and Canada when it comes to this issue is the political and cultural climate surrounding marijuana. In the UK, they are gripped right now in reefer madness. Prime Minister Tony Blair, Home Office Secretary Jackie Smith, we're all aware of the public statements they have made regarding the alleged harms of marijuana and how the government there has taken steps to clamp down on the use of marijuana. Whereas in Canada, Health Canada has taken steps several years ago to actually allow for the distribution and use of medical marijuana. So it is not surprising to me that when Health Canada had an opportunity to approve a cannabis-based product, they did so. It's equally not surprising to me that when England had a chance to do the same thing, they rejected it.
Yeah, and the England, the situation there in England too is just most remarkable. I've gone from calling it reefer madness to skunk scaremongering. They have this idea that there's some new deadly skunk out there that's causing all of these problems. We've gone over that on the stash many times. Now on the on this side here about the pharmaceutical companies and the prohibition of marijuana, I can see how many of these companies will be just chomping at the bit to get these patents on various cannabinoid medicines and make a profit that way. What about the theory, though, the part of the theory that says if there's natural plant cannabis available, people will use that in lieu of using things like Prozac or anti-nausea drugs and cause the pharmaceutical industries to lose money that way?
You know, it's certainly possible that there will be people that would choose to use marijuana over pharmaceuticals. There's people right now, despite the illegality of marijuana, that make that choice, and we all understand why they do so. But to think that the overwhelming majority of Americans will choose to use cannabis, even in areas where cannabis may be superior to pharmaceuticals, to think that the majority of people will suddenly begin rejecting the use of pharmaceuticals and go back to solely using a legal medicinal herb, you know, in my opinion, is just unrealistic. I mean, the legal availability of echinacea has not derailed the pharmaceutical industry. The fact that literally hundreds of thousands of people in California right now have legal access to medical marijuana and are using marijuana therapeutically has not hurt the bottom line of the pharmaceutical industry. Last time I checked, pharmaceuticals were still sold in the Netherlands. They're still sold in Canada. So I just do not believe that the pharmaceutical industry is in any way afraid that the legal access and use of marijuana will hurt their bottom line. Frankly, I think that the more people become familiar with the medical utility of marijuana, the more likely that a larger segment of the population would then be willing to also try Big Pharma's new cannabis-based medicines when and if they come to market, and the more likely it will be that doctors will be willing to prescribe those medicines when they come to market.
Well, it's definitely a future we're looking forward to, a legal, regulated market where the scientists can actually look into all these cannabinoid drugs and come up with different formulations, different ratios of THC and CBD and other compounds there. It's definitely a future we're looking forward to. And also, I think I would agree with you on that, also from a perspective of convenience. I mean, anybody here in America can get the natural aspirin from willow bark if they want to go through the trouble of doing so, but it's a whole lot easier to just get a bare aspirin and a glass of water.
Yeah, most certainly. And I, there again, as I said, there are literally, hundreds of legal herbs and natural remedies available in this country. There are individuals that go out of their way to use only those sort of herbs or those sort of traditional medications, and they forego the use of synthetic drugs and pharmaceuticals. But they're not the majority. And even in the case of marijuana, were marijuana to be a legal herb, or if we look in areas like California where medical marijuana is legal, while there are obviously a large number of people who then choose to use marijuana medicinally, there are literally far many more people who have no experience with medical marijuana and really show no interest in going down that road. Those individuals are going to continue to be using pharmaceutical medications, whether marijuana is legal or not. And for better or worse, those individuals tend to make up the majority of the population, not just in America, but across the world. That's why the pharmaceutical industry is big pharma. And while I am not necessarily thrilled that they will likely exploit the natural compounds in marijuana, I also do not believe that they are playing a role in suppressing the research or the availability to natural marijuana. Frankly, if it wasn't for the private pharmaceutical industry conducting much of the research over the past decade or so on these synthetic cannabinoids or cannabis agonists, there wouldn't really be very much research for us to be talking about medical marijuana.
Well, it's an interesting theory and one we hope that we can test out here in the future with the change of our marijuana laws. And if you'd like to continue the discussion, maybe, folks, maybe you disagree. We do have this posted up at the NORML website, U.S. Government Patents Medical Pot, and we do now have a commenting system available. So if you have comments, you can leave them there, and we can continue the discussion online at norml.org. And Paul, we'll have you back in the future, and we'll take a look at some of these other marijuana myths and these cannabis theories that come up from time to time, and we'll try to identify who the real culprits are in drug prohibition. Thanks for joining us.
Sure, there's certainly many real culprits to go around.
We'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about those. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Take care, Russ.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another cannabis quote, this one a little bit of reefer madness from the former drug czar under the first President Bush, William Bennett. Yes, the man with the $8 million gambling debt habit. He said once, quote,
"Marijuana causes people to lose their memory and lose their energy, and it makes them stupid. It is the last thing that one would want to see happen on or around a university or state capitol. And people who are casual about drugs ought to realize that a lot of people are dying in America."
End quote. Well, Bill Bennett, as drug czar, you didn't do very much to put a dent in that, did you? In fact, over the past 10, 20, even 30 years, all the statistics about drug use, price of drugs, purity of drugs, have all gone into the negative side of things if you were trying to solve the drug problem. Prohibition just does not work. It's time to end it. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews you can use for your cannabis community. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.